everyone. Thank you so much for hopping on this episode of the GBA Talk Show, as well as the Blockchain Legal Institute Talk Show. I am extremely excited to have a conversation today about the importance of personal IDs, professional IDs, and so many other ways that we are protecting our information online. The individual that will be speaking today actually is connected with the Government Blockchain Association and the organization has actually gone through the blockchain maturity model assessment process. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about that. And for those that do not know what the BMM is, there'll be links below so that way you can actually watch videos about it and submit for consideration and, do everything that you need to do to have your organization assessed to see where you are in the process of blockchain maturity. I want to welcome you today. How are you doing today? Thank you so much for hopping on.
Hi, Jackie. Thank you for having me.
So why don't you go ahead? I know your background is very diverse. You have done many things in your career, and I'm all about stories and where people are. So why don't you go ahead and share a little bit about how you came to the blockchain space and how you decided that this was an important area for you to kind of dive into career-wise and professionally. So why don't you share a little bit about that? And then we're going to share screen to show your company.
Sure, definitely. Thank you, Jackie. So I'm Shiv Aggarwal. I'm the co-founder of EarthID, which is a decentralized identity platform. I'll come to that later, but talking about my historical professional, this thing is that I come from a technical background. So I am actually the first engineer in my family, and then I'm the first person to basically travel outside India. So that is sort of puts a lot of pressure on me to sort of set a guiding beacon for my family and my future generations. But having said that, so I have worked in the technology space for over 15 years as a certified enterprise architect. So before we started EarthID in 2019, before that I was working with the CXOs of large enterprises like Bank of America, Unilever, and so on and so forth, and helping them with the adoption of niche technologies, right? So, and during that course of action, my responsibility was to assess new technologies from a fitment perspective. And then I also basically worked on various cybersecurity initiatives, and especially sitting in UK, I live in London, and then I've worked with a lot of clients in London. And then because we have this GDPR, which is a global data protection regulation, so it's about how do you protect your customers, how do you protect their data as well as their privacy. So that angle is also quite important. So looking at those aspects, eventually, basically in 2019, I stumbled upon blockchain technology. Obviously, Bitcoin was at the hype, but then it was also about what is the technology behind this particular cryptocurrency, which is sort of making everyone go crazy. And as an enterprise architect, I started basically assessing blockchain technology, and that is when basically I came in touch with GBA. So I joined GBA as a member, but then eventually I became a chapter lead, the London chapter lead, and eventually I took over the responsibility of EMEA director as well. So I left GBA 2 years ago, but then I had a strong relationship with GBA during that period.
No, I love it. I mean, the fact that your vision is definitely global, and we're going to share screen right now because what has been created is definitely extremely important. So why don't you go ahead and explain a little bit about what EarthID is, why having a decentralized identity for people, there are many people who are listening to these talk shows, they don't understand the vocabulary. So we're going to have to explain the difference, between centralized IDs and decentralized IDs, and even within the platforms in which you might use these IDs. Again, it's just like when the internet first happened, everyone is learning as they go, and there's so much within our world right now. So what was the problem that needed to be solved? And then what did you create? And then how, I see a lot of different tabs, we're going to go through them. And why did you think that you wanted to go through the BMM process? So let's, share more.
Yeah, sure. Let me start with EarthID. What EarthID is. So EarthID is a multi-award winning decentralized identity platform, which help organizations safeguard, minimize, and reuse the personally identifiable information of their stakeholders, like stakeholders being their customers, their users, citizens for public services, and so forth. So it's about how do you enable organizations to prevent identity frauds? How do you enable them with respect to complying with several data protection and privacy laws around the world? It's also about how do you help them with operational efficiencies when they are dealing with this particular data. And then lastly, it's about fostering customer trust, right? Because trust is the most expensive commodity that we have in the world right now, right? It's very expensive to basically create trust with your customers, with your users, and that is where EarthID steps in, right? And when we look at what decentralized identity is, so decentralized identity is basically how do you basically move away from a centralized solution wherein basically the data, we are creating honeypots of data which can be easily hacked and misused. And secondly, also about the control, right? Because most of the times when we look at centralized identities, they are managed and controlled by specific organizations. For example, you can talk about Google, you can talk about Facebook, you can talk about your driving license. So all those things are basically being issued by a single authority, and then they are managed and they can be taken away by the central authority. So the user has a very small role to play in the ownership of these particular identities. But when we talk about decentralized identity, there are two perspectives. One is the data storage, so how the data is being stored from an individual standpoint. So in a decentralized model or in an EarthID's model, every individual gets a private wallet through which they can sort of manage their specific identity information. And secondly, it's about decentralization of the control. So instead of different organization managing your data, you are in complete control. So it's a user-centric identity wherein you are able to decide what information you want to share with whom and for how long. So it's about basically empowering the user with data ownership, privacy, and consent. So that is what decentralized identity is. And EarthID is multi-award winning. So we have basically proven our mettle with respect to how we are doing things from a decentralized perspective and also from a user centricity perspective. Our long-term vision is to basically drive social, financial, and digital inclusion through the power of decentralized identity. And our short-term mission is to basically create a digital identity platform or a decentralized identity platform, which is basically which is safe against the threats from generative AI and from quantum computing, right? Because right now what is happening is like these are the two main things that are happening in the industry, which are putting a lot of security or cyber security to risk, because quantum computing can break any algorithm, and then AI, basically through AI you can spoof any system. So those are the things that we are focusing on.
Those are really important topics that I think a lot of individuals are just starting to become aware of, because again, um, there are there's a spectrum of knowledge that's out there. There are those of us who are navigating the blockchain community. I'm sort of in the middle. You're on the more tech side, so you already have, looked at what are the problems. But then there's the other side of those that are just starting their journey.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, a lot of the blockchain technology will start to be integrated within, so they won't even have to think about, okay, what is this? Because they're just going to naturally be using it. But you're already forward thinking, looking at, okay, for those new, they still have an ID, they have an identity. It's not like we might always be hybrid, paper and online, but if you are online, how much and what do you want to share? And like you said, who are you sharing it with? And then how do you protect it? And everything that's going on right now in the EU eventually spills over to other countries. So what you're doing by looking at, all the various factors really is going to help the communities that haven't taken that step yet. So I
Definitely.
see we have the solutions vertical where you talk about the platform, the compliance, and the features in the industry. We have the technology side, biometrics, distributed ledger, passwordless, zero knowledge proof. Um, I am I am going to ask you a little bit about the biometric side, because um, I'm interested in how you're handling that because of my being an attorney and some of the other things that I want to be addressing. But today is about you. But how are you handling the biometrics? I'm curious about that.
It's a very good question. Actually, it's a very important question because I think when we talk about personal identity information, that can be sort of divided into biometric information and basically which is like who you are, and then also basically some of the other digital identities which are being issued by different organizations. But the implication of sharing your biometric is multifold, right? People don't even realize when they are sharing their biometric information with different service providers. I think one of the biggest example is WorldCoin, where they started sort of paying people to sort of register their biometric information with them. And then there's so many legal, you know better than this, right? There's so many legal implications with respect to how do you manage the biometric information in your customers. So this is where basically we are bringing the innovation to the table from the point of view that we call a concept of zero knowledge biometrics, which is about when you are basically when you are capturing the biometric information. Most of the existing solutions, what they do is like they capture the information and then they basically transmit it to a service provider or a server in the cloud. And then basically that is processed whenever it's needed. So the problem with that solution is that uh, when when this biometric information is captured and being shared, it can be sort of hacked, and then it can be misused for various different purposes. However, with our model, basically we do all the processing on the user device, and then no actual biometric information is translated or transferred to any third party services or servers. So that means is that the user is in complete control with respect to basically not transmitting any of their biometric information, and also being in general in control with respect to what they are sharing from their device. So that basically makes it very, very privacy preserving. And then it also has the explicit consent baked in so that the user is explicitly providing a consent with respect to what they are sharing and not. And then specifically about biometrics is that we make sure that the biometric is dealt in a way where basically there's no inherent trust. So basically we remove the need of the trust from the equation. And then also we are ensuring that the actual biometric information of the user is not being stored or not being processed.
Interesting. So I'm going, for those that are on the audio side, the reason why I'm also explaining what we're seeing, definitely hop on over to the YouTube side, is there's an about vertical, which talks about the company, latest news and partners and resources, blogs and events. So explain a little bit about the blockchain maturity model process that you went through and why you decided to kind of participate in that. Explain a little bit about that.
Sure, definitely. Let me first answer the why question. So, because as I mentioned, right? So now I have over 20 years of experience in the technology space, and then before we started EarthID, I was working in the enterprise space for around 15 years. And being an enterprise architect, our responsibility was basically to ensure that the solutions that we are building, they are fit for purpose, and also the vendors that we are involving, the IT vendors and any other service providers, they are also have basically maturity with respect to deliver a solution which is fit for purpose, right? It's because it has to be enterprise grade. And there are a lot of basically accreditations that exist for centralized solutions, right? But nothing exists in the blockchain space or in a
Yeah.
decentralized space. And that is where I think it becomes difficult for enterprises to basically make a decision with respect to what can they use and what they cannot use, because obviously they want to de-risk, right? They want to basically make sure that any investment that they are making, it's de-risked and it's going to basically align with their strategic expectations, right? uh, and then I think, and that is when basically that is where the blockchain maturity model fits in. And I think this is because I am very close to GBA, so I understand the journey, how it started and what was the journey with respect to defining the blockchain maturity model. But then even then, when we were going through the process, I was really impressed with respect to how detailed this is. Like, so the problem blockchain maturity model is solving is that how do you enable blockchain-based solutions or decentralized solutions to become fit for purpose? They can, so that they become fit for purpose with respect to their interoperability, their reliance, their governance, their performance, security, and so on and so forth, so that potential customers are basically are willing to adopt such solutions, right? So it's about basically an ethical and sustainable adoption of blockchain solutions by making them compliant with the expectations of the industry and the specific customers.
So did you find that the process, did you have to gather a lot of information for the process? How did you find the process?
I think the process is quite intense, and actually it's a good thing, right? Because I think that means that you are looking at everything and then you're thinking about everything. Because the way I'm looking at this is that there are some things that you know, there are certain things that you do, and then there are certain things which you document or basically define as a process. So me being in the industry for quite long, I knew a lot of things, right? And my team was doing a lot of things. But the question was, are we documenting them properly? Are we basically defining them as processes? Because eventually the customer would look at what you have defined or what you are following, right? And this is where basically blockchain, when we decided that we are going to go through the BMM assessment, we looked at the requirements, the type of documentation that were expected. So we had to basically question everything, right? We had to revisit all the documentation that we have. We had to revisit all the processes we have, and we had to make sure that the requirements are met with respect to how the solution is distributed, how the solution is interoperable, how the solution is resilient, how the solution is being governed, how the solution is basically secure, and then also basically a lot of functional and non-functional requirements. How are they being met, right? So this is where it started as a simple exercise, but it became an intense exercise to make sure that we are not just doing it for the sake of a piece of paper. It's about basically we are getting ready in a way that enterprises can basically confidently adopt us.
I agree. The process is one of discovery and exploration and reflection, which is always important for any company with the growth. What suggestions do you have for companies that might be considering stepping into doing the blockchain maturity model assessment? What recommendations would you give to them so that way they can then think about how to make their journey more successful? I mean, in looking back at the process of what you went through, there are certain things that you learned. So for those new companies that might be doing the same, what suggestions do you have?
Okay, sure. The first suggestion is that you should definitely do it, right? But the main thing is that you should do it from a sincerity point of view, not just from a sort of a process point of view, right? Because the most important thing is that when you are going through the process and the type of people involved, right? Because if you look at the BM assessment team and the experts involved in that team, they have immense experience, right? They are like sort of experts in their respective fields. So the knowledge that they bring to the table is amazing. And then you are getting access to that knowledge, right? Secondly, basically, I think what would happen is like when you are going through this process from us in a sincere way, you would basically look at every aspect of your company and your solution to make sure that it's basically compliant and it's fit for purpose for the industry. So what that means is that if you basically and then you also need to basically make sure that you are maturing with while you are going through the process, right? Because obviously as of today you stand at a particular maturity, right? And the one way of looking at that is that sort of assessing that maturity and getting a certification. But the question is, while you are doing this exercise, can you mature further? Can you improve your processes? Can you improve your team skills? Can you sort of improve the resilience of your solution? So this is actually a journey, not just a reflection in a point in time, right? So that is what I think it can generate great results if you do it properly.
I agree with you. Um, who are the individuals or businesses that you're looking to help within your company with the Earth ID? Who should be reaching out to you to use your services?
Okay, that's a good question. While identity is a cross-cutting concern, right? It can solve a lot of different problems. And actually, if you look at any industry or any organization, they would have some need of an identity solution. However, from EarthID's perspective, we are focusing primarily on financial services because that is one sector which spends the most amount of money on protecting the identity of their customers. Secondly, public sector, because obviously public sector is dealing with a lot of identity information about the citizens or their customers. And lastly, we are also focusing on the education system. So these are the three sectors that we are primarily focusing on.
And they are huge because, you know, when you look at all those areas, like you said, they're working with massive amounts of information, dealing with large groups of people. And those are the areas that really need to be protected. But I would ask that anyone that's listening, as an individual, as a citizen, you need to also educate yourself as to all these areas, because even if the entities that you're working with are not looking at them, you need to know how to protect your own personal identity. So it's really important, for you to explore, what we were talking about today from your own personal identity. It might not just be the corporate side that has to look at this. You as an individual needs to be learning how to own your identity and protect it as well. Any last minute thoughts that you want to share before we log off?
Yeah, sure. I think my final comment would be that I think when we think about digital identity, it's about basically about accessibility, it's about inclusion, and then it's also about basically data protection and privacy. So it's important that organizations as well as individuals, as you rightly said, right, we need to educate ourselves to make sure that we are adopting a solution which basically ensures that that the data is protected, the customers are protected, the people are protected, and then basically the services are fit for purpose.
I could not have said that better. And as I always say at the end of all the shows, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. We're all part of one world. We're all so interconnected. Everyone definitely like and subscribe for this episode. Share it with others that you know, so that way they have this information, both about EarthID as well as about the blockchain maturity model assessment process. So that way we can have others join in the vision of making sure that we protect and educate our community. So thank you so much for being on. I look forward to having more conversations with you. And everyone, have a great day.